My YouTube hooks used to be way too long. I knew the first 30 seconds were important, but I could never figure out what I was supposed to cut. But after 3 years, over 500 script writing students and millions of views, I found an easy way to shrink my hooks down without deleting anything. Let me show you how, so you can understand how to hook your viewers without cutting any important information. But there's a simple concept you need to grasp first, which I actually stole from this book. Now, Made to Stick is actually about marketing, but so much of it is applicable to YouTube as well. And the concept you need to get your head around here is something called critical versus beneficial information. Now, critical information is what you would imagine, right? It's stuff that will actively convince your audience to keep watching. That's usually stuff like the video's core concept or what's at stake for the viewer. Like when I said, let me show you how, so you can understand how to hook your viewers without cutting any important information. The video literally wouldn't make sense without it. But beneficial information, on the other hand, is just that. It's nice to know, but it's not what's actively going to convince the viewers to watch. We're going to look at some examples so you can learn to spot the difference, but the point is, your hook must only contain critical information. Because if you waste time on anything that isn't directly tied to convincing the viewer to keep watching, they'll get bored and they'll leave. And there are 3 main types of beneficial information that I see breaking hooks all the time. So let's break them down. Now, the first is the easiest to fall into. See if you can spot it in this hook. I'll show you the bench press strategy that'll help you increase your 1 rep max by 10 kilograms per month, every month, without injuring yourself. It's all about finding the right balance between loading more weight, eating properly, and making sure you're sleeping well enough. Could you see the problem? Well, now let me show you what this same hook looks like once I've removed the offending beneficial information. I'll show you the bench press strategy that'll help you increase your 1 rep max by 10 kilograms per month, every month, without injuring yourself. See, the extra information about adding weight or changing diet and improving sleep is interesting, but it's not critical information. It doesn't alter the promise of the video, which is the thing that actually hooks them. It goes into detail about the process instead, which is unnecessary. So that's the first type of beneficial information to look out for. It's simply too much information. But the second type is even harder to spot. In fact, I only narrowly avoided doing it when I wrote the intro for this video, which originally went like this. My YouTube hooks used to be way too long. I knew the first 30 seconds were important, but I could never figure out what I was supposed to cut. Even when writing scripts for YouTubers like Ali Abdaal and Mike Shake, I felt like I was guessing. But after 3 years, over 500 script writing students and millions of views, I found an easy way to shrink my hooks down without deleting anything. Not much difference, right? The only change was that extra line about Ali and Mike. The line's okay, and I genuinely wrote it in the V1 hook of this video. But here's the thing. You only need to prove your credibility once during the hook. I could have used that line about Ali and Mike instead of the hundreds of students and millions of views line, but I didn't need both. Because remember, we're trying to keep our hooks as to the point as possible. And while the first credibility statement is usually critical, any more than that, and you're cooked. So now onto the third and final type of beneficial information that bloats your hook. And this one has the simplest fix yet. Now, imagine if my video had started like this. Making your YouTube hooks shorter is just like solving a Rubik's Cube. I mean, you can try your best to do it right, but you can't tell if every decision you make is actually making things worse. And you twist and you turn, and an hour later you realize the thing was much better when you started. And while there is technically a right way to do it, you become overwhelmed with the number of choices and get analysis paralysis. Now, the expression I have for a hook like this is a fucking mess. The problem isn't really with the choice of metaphor, but the fact that we're using up our valuable hook time on introducing that metaphor. Metaphors are great for explaining more complex ideas or teaching them in a more memorable way, but they're rarely what the viewer needs to be convinced to watch. The viewer cares about the result you can offer, not the fancy language you wrapped it in. And in 99% of videos, you should leave your metaphor until after the hook. But where exactly? In fact, with all 3 of our hook problems that we've discussed today, if they don't go in the hook, where do they go? If your problem is that you've used too much detail, that extra detail can be moved and turned into a setup for segment 1. So in the example of our weightlifting video, we would use that extra information in the hook and say something like this. The first thing we're going to cover is the exact way to load more weight in less time. If your problem is that you've used too much credibility, you can actually move those credibility statements to a later segment to elevate a particular story or add credibility to a specific claim. Like how I still got to mention in this video the fact that I'd written scripts for Ali and Mike, but I did so after the hook. And as for metaphors, you can either introduce them at the start of segment 1 as an overarching metaphor that's going to carry the viewer through the entire video, or you can drop your metaphor into a specific segment to explain something that's more complex. So before you straight up delete something from your next hook, check to see if it can be redistributed instead. But when it comes to redistributing information around your script, it can quickly get overwhelming, especially as your script starts to get longer. So watch this video next to learn why I completely changed how I structure my YouTube scripts and how adopting this simple method will prevent you from getting stressed out the next time you sit down to write one.